Thank you for coming tonight, and we welcome Chad Bishop as our first speaker.
I forgot to remind her about the input. No worries. Good evening. My name is Chad Bishop. I live at 7405 South Valencia Drive here in Sioux Falls. In the spirit of diffusing an artificial political and social tension, I'm once again asking you to consider acknowledging staff and students with COVID-19 recovered status in your policies as equivalent to that of the voluntarily vaccinated, to reimburse your employees and staff for SARS-CoV-2 antibody and adaptive T-cell response assays so they might learn of their immune status. That when the Sioux Falls School District informs parents of vaccination clinics, they should inform parents that they should consider screening their child for previous infection prior to vaccination or consider a previous PCR positive test as concordant. Given there's been no movement on these policies requests since I began addressing them, I assume you as policymakers have been operating under the assumption that the recommendations made by our medical experts, both local and national, with respect to natural immunity as represented by the CDC, represent a scientific consensus. If so, I would respectfully request that you watch the following clip of an interview with Dr. Paul Offit published January 25th of this year. In this clip, he recounts the meeting where he was, quote, asked along with 3 other people to advise the administration on whether or not natural infection should count as a vaccine, unquote. Per his recollection of this interview, those in attendance were himself as director of the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, representing the pediatric point of view, CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky, then NIH Director Dr. Francis Collins, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy, and Dr. Anthony Fauci, Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. In this interview, Dr. Offit recalls, quote, I mean, you have been vaccinated essentially, but here, and I think it was probably more bureaucratic than anything else, it is not at all surprising that if you're naturally infected, that you will develop high frequencies of memory B and T cells, which should protect you against serious illness. And I think that is what the CDC has now shown, unquote. Later he says, quote, but the 4 of us were asked to comment on did we think natural infection basically should count in situations where vaccine is mandated. And I was one of the 2 people that said yes. The other 2 people said no, unquote. Please note, Dr. Offit's bio states, he's an internationally recognized expert in the field of virology and immunology. So a broad scientific consensus is now a 50-50 split in a secret meeting which was never publicized. Why are you just hearing this now? Tonight I have an additional request. File a FOIA request for the minutes of this meeting. Again, quoting Dr. Offit from a different interview. So sure, I think that if all parents decided to vaccinate those children, that would certainly contribute to herd immunity, but that's not an argument I would ever make for a parent, which is that you're vaccinating your child to protect others. You're vaccinating your child to protect your child. Given the data I've provided in the last several weeks, this begs the question. So what benefit is there to a child who has already recovered from COVID-19 to receive any of the vaccines on offer? In the Lancet Volume 22 issue published January 1st of this year, given the evidence of immunity from previous SARS-CoV-2 infection, however, policymakers should consider recovery from previous SARS-CoV-2 infection equal to immunity from vaccination for purposes related to entry to public events, businesses, and the workplace or travel requirements. They still saw fit to threaten people's jobs, though. Reuters, citing the CDC's January 19th report, which states, importantly, infection-derived protection was greater after the highly transmissible Delta variant became predominant, coinciding with early declining of vaccine-induced immunity in many persons. The focus in this report visibly shows the risk to COVID-19 recovered being less than the voluntarily vaccinated and boosted. So 5 months after the Israeli government published the largest study to date stating the risk of the vaccine breakthrough Delta case was 13-fold higher than the risk of developing a second infection, it seems the CDC has finally concurred. My point, the benefit of vaccinated the COVID-19 recovered is negligible, if not zero. In medical ethics, these negligible benefits must be compared to the risk to discern if treatment is ethical for the individual. From the same Lancet article, this tidbit, some people who have recovered from COVID-19 might not benefit from a COVID-19 vaccination. In fact, one study found that previous COVID-19 was associated with increased adverse events following vaccination with the Comirnaty mRNA vaccine, that's the Pfizer-BioNTech. When it comes to children, what should we make of the Reuters report that Sweden decides against recommending COVID-19 vaccinations for ages 5 to 11? With the knowledge we have today, with the low risk for serious disease for kids, we don't see any clear benefit with vaccinating them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
I'll send a link.
Okay. Our next speaker or